For years, Rose has been the strongest alliance in politics and war, and halfway through 2024 it looked like that trend was bound to keep going. Eclipse and TKR had just finished fighting each other for the 100th time, with Eclipse coming out on top, but still taking a fair bit of damages. Together with Singularity and the fighting pacifists, along with all their allies, they just finished dogpiling the Syndicate. They are also able to expand that war into Event Horizon, neutralizing them as well for the time being. It looked like things were on the up, and Rose was set to maintain that top spot for a long time. However, 1 year later, none of that happened, and Rose is now firmly no longer in the top alliance in politics and war, and they are closer to third than they are to first. The question then becomes, what happened and where did everything go wrong? And that's something I'm going to try to explore in this video. Alright, we gotta backtrack a little bit here. In 2024, the Syndicate had not been making many friends, and over time it was becoming more and more obvious they were soon going to get rolled. Their allies were not overly keen to defend them and essentially jumped ship in the hopes of not getting rolled. This allegedly led to them, in particular Event Horizon and their sphere, making some political concessions in an attempt to avoid war with this massive coalition. Ultimately though, they did end up getting dragged into the war regardless, with mostly Rose being held responsible for this. Whether you think the rolling was deserved or not, it did lead to short-term success for Rose, but it also led to EVH leadership carefully looking for an opportunity to take revenge, and eventually that opportunity will present itself. Before we get to that however, we need to talk about Camelot. Camelot has always been a bit of a wild card in this game, and their leader Epi tends to do things that don't always make a lot of sense, at least from the outside. I don't want to go too much into depth about this, but it's important to mention, as Camelot will actually suicide into Rose a few months after this dogpile happened. Now this ultimately didn't account for a whole lot and didn't last that long, but taking those monetary damages when you're in an arms race with the other major powers does unfortunately for Rose matter. After this conflict, Rose quickly rebuilt, having just been turned for a bit by Camelot, likely feeling like they were safe. They could not have been more wrong. House Sphere and Eclipse Sphere, having been at odds for a long time, started to make amends behind the scenes. House Sphere was likely not willing to fight Eclipse Sphere again after having fought them for quite a while, with only very limited success. But to be fair, earlier this year the entire game blindsided House Sphere, signing a global non-aggression pact with essentially the entire game except them. So there's probably merit to not wanting to fight Eclipse again. Meanwhile, Eclipse Sphere likely saw the opportunities created for them to become the dominant force in the game, with Eclipse having been the rank 2 alliance for quite a while now. Sphere, being oblivious as to what was going on, was not at all ready when Eclipse and TKR Sphere declared a surprise war in December of 2024. With essentially all of Rose not being militarized, and their opponents having just double bought, the decision was made to not call in their allies. I suspect they likely felt the war could not be won due to the massive surprise factor and being caught off guard to this extent, despite on paper having near equal numbers with their allies. The damage taken in this war was massive. VM rate and member loss was high. By the time the war wrapped up, Rose and Eclipse were likely equal in number potential. However, Rose made the decision to not fully rebuild, as they likely did not feel as safe as they once did, which turned out to be a decision they would not regret making. When the war wrapped up, Singularity felt like it was their time to suicide into an alliance, with the unlucky recipient being TKR Sphere. Without going into too much details on this situation, as the walls of text written about this conflict still haunt me to this day, Rose was now well and truly at its least secure point it had been in a long while. Event Horizon now saw this as its opportunity to work towards their war with Rose, despite attempts by Rose Sphere to settle things peacefully. Whilst Rose was prepared when EVH Sphere inevitably blitzed them, they were unable to win the war. Monetary damages for Rose were relatively low compared to their war against Eclipse and TKR, as they did not fully rebuild. However, member erosion was seriously starting to kick in. The war would be relatively short though, and damage was somewhat limited. It was however pretty clear at this point that Rose was not getting that number 1 spot back, with Eclipse now being the clear strongest alliance in the game. And that's where our story ends for now, is what I wish I could say. But we unfortunately need to talk about Camelot again. Camelot and Rose attempted to align themselves with each other after Camelot had suicided into them. This did not work out however, following lots of drama during the global, alleged proxying, attempts by Camelot to avoid a nap, and what is by most considered a non-aggression pact break, Rose found themselves ultimately getting turreted by Camelot yet again, with that war only ending very recently. After taking yet more damage, now this leads us to today, where Rose is now sitting at a hotly contested number 2 spot on the leaderboard. With Eclipse being far and away the strongest alliance nowadays, kinda like the situation Rose used to be in. There is some reason to be positive though, with most CBs used against Rose by now, and the target off their back, Rose could have the potential to bounce back. I would personally love to see them turn things around, because for what it's worth, which is very little, my opinion of Rose is the most favorable it's been in a long time, and I wish them the best of luck in the future. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see me make more lore videos about this game, please let me know by liking this video. Hope you have a wonderful day, and peace out.